Well, for legal purposes, you'll have that. I'm just teasing. All right. Hey now, and how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. Man, I'm really excited because Dave and Doug, man, I love being around these guys. While we're not around right now, but it's going to be coming up real soon in 2 weeks. May 30th. I know you're down in Lakeside for the Phillies. What was it? Lakewood?
Lakewood, yeah.
Lakewood. Yep. Uh, for the Phillies A-ball team. So can't wait to see you guys for that. And let me bring you on. So Doug, Dave, welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
I have to be in control of the mic, to make sure that he doesn't talk too much.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm sure. I'm sure you
Uh,
guys will fight
you
over it
know,
by the end of the time.
I forgot the name of your podcast, and I might have to sneak out here and get the real bat if I can find it, the
Yeah.
historic bat.
I'd love to see your bat as long as it's a baseball bat. It's okay.
Well, it's a baseball bat. It's a historic bat. It has
Yeah.
something to do with his that hat the guy's got on right there.
Well, I'd love to hear about it already then. Then while Dave's talking about it, why don't you go look for it?
Yeah, take off, Doug. Uh,
How's it going, Dave?
oh, well, the bat that he's going to get, Dave, is the bat that actually closed out the last remnant of the Negro Leagues. It actually closed the books on the history of the Negro Leagues. It was a bat that yours truly used, and I hit a ground ball to third base and was thrown out at first, and that ended the game. And that ended the game. That ended the season. That ended my career. So with a little pissant ground ball to third base, three things happened. My career was over. The season was over, and for all intent purposes, the Negro League history, the book was closed.
Well, okay, so let's since you started there, I'd love to explain me a little bit because I'm didn't know that you played in the Negro Leagues. How'd that all come together?
The Indianapolis Clowns are one of the storied franchises of the Negro Leagues. If you've heard of Hank Aaron,
Yep.
Aaron started his professional career with the Clowns back in 1952 uh, when the Clowns were an all-black team. For those that don't know what the Negro Leagues are, until Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in 1947, blacks were not allowed to play in the white major leagues, so they formed their own major league. And from all intent, purposes, and stories that I've heard, that league was every bit as strong as the American and National Leagues at the time. So the Negro Leagues, after Jackie was signed, they slowly started withering away because other blacks were signed
Yep.
into the major leagues. And I'll ask you a question, Dave. Who
Oh.
was the second? Everybody knows Jackie was first. Who was the second black player signed into the major leagues?
Was it Larry Doby with the Indians?
You got it.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Larry Doby with the Cleveland Indians by Bill Veeck. And so the Clowns and the Kansas City Monarchs were the last two teams that were playing. And they ended up barnstorming because there was no league to play in after that. So both teams ended up barnstorming. The Clowns outlasted the Monarchs. I don't know exactly when the Monarchs ceased operations, but for us, I played with the Clowns in 1975 and 1976 as a pitcher. Um, the Clowns integrated in reverse in 1968. They had their first white player, who you may know that name, Harry Chappis,
Oh.
who went on to play with Chicago White Sox.
Mm.
He was a 5'2" middle infielder that signed with the Clowns in 1968. And so fast forward to the 80s, I had hurt my pitching arm while pitching in the Swedish major leagues, which ultimately ended my pitching career. So I came back as a first baseman for the Indianapolis Clowns and bought the team. It's the only way I was going to be able to play was buy my own team. So I bought my own team, and the last game was August 14th, 1988 in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Wow.
And Doug's holding the bat that made the last out.
There you go. Wow, that's incredible.
So when we bring a bat, we bring real history to your podcast here, thanks to Dave Clark.
That's a signature bat too. It's
I saw your name on it. I saw the Dave Clark. Yeah. So
the Hillerich and Bradsby made our bats that year for us. So we had signature bats.
wow. So okay, so you guys have a huge history, but let's explain who Dave Clark is. No disrespect. No,
I'll just leave.
No,
I'll just leave now.
yeah, just wait. You're gonna come in. I have a plan here, Doug.
No, it's all right.
I know it doesn't
No,
always
it's all
believe
right.
that way, but I do have a plan. But so Dave, so we saw the Clowns, but you were actually a professional ball player. I mean, you have a great story, and I don't know that everybody knows your story yet, and I do believe everybody needs to hear your story because it's definitely one of motivation, inspiration, and what we talk about on here, a lot of perspiration. So I'd love to hear, from the horse's mouth,
Well,
really what it is.
I'll go right back at the beginning. I had polio when I was 10 months old, 1953. So I'm dating myself, but it was a year and a half before the polio vaccine. And I was taken away from my parents for a year, put in a reconstruction home, as they called it then. Did not get good reviews initially. My parents were told good chance I wasn't going to survive. 2 weeks later, they told him, looks like he's going to survive, but he's going to be a vegetable. And that's what they used, the word they used, a vegetable, not having any use of muscles. And a year later, I came out walking with 2 full-length leg braces and crutches. And fast forward, to cut the story short, I participated in all the sports growing up as a kid and somehow found that despite my limits, I always found a way to compete with the able-bodied kid and could compete successfully. And so I just kept pushing the envelope. And by the time I was maybe 13, 14, 15, I started realizing that I wasn't going to be throwing 90 miles an hour. And to get to live my dream, I had to figure out something else. And so I started working on a knuckleball, and took me probably a good year and a half, maybe 2 years to perfect the grip, the arm angle, the release point that worked for me. And
On crutches, mind
on
you.
crutches, on crutches,
I want
crutches.
I know part of your story, but I want to make sure that everybody knows it wasn't just you got to throw a knuckleball, and there's a lot more. There's a little more challenge to that.
Yeah, and don't ask me to explain my delivery because
That's a knuckleball, right?
I probably couldn't. I mean, one crutch got pulled out from underneath my throwing arm, and once I released the pitch, it was all in sync. The crutch would come right back up and underneath my throwing arm. And I was Jim Abbott before Jim Abbott appeared because I used a left-handed glove, even though I was right-handed. And that little story goes back to when I was 8 years old. I forgot my glove at one of our Sandlot games. And the only glove I could borrow was a left-handed glove. And I was finding anyway, wearing my right-handed glove, I was finding that I could not because my left leg is in a locked brace. So I couldn't flex my knee on the left side, and I couldn't get down low with a right-hander's glove to field low throws or ground balls. But the day I found that left-hander's glove, I found I could backhand to that side and get all the way down to the ground, catch low throws, catch low ground balls. And so I started perfecting, like I said, Jim Abbott did exactly what I do. He took the glove off, threw, and the glove came right back on his pitching hand. And that's exactly what I did. Only add a crutch to the mix. So
Yeah, you
so
you had to do it a little bit with your style. But
correct.
but okay, and for those who don't know, not only did you play professional ball, you were a coach for the Swedish national team. But
I
all
was
yeah.
yeah, I played for 17 seasons combined as a pitcher and then first baseman. After that, I scouted for 6 different major league organizations and coached in Sweden. Coached 2 different teams in their what they call the Swedish Elite League, and then had a stint as a spring training coach with the Atlanta Braves during the golden era of the Braves, um, which was a great experience. And then I can't remember everything, man.
I'm
They
not asking you to remember everything. But
I was involved with Team USA at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. Was a pitching coach for the Swedish national team. If I forgot something, I
yeah,
forgot.
no, but also, so again, you were also, relief pitcher of the year when Rolaids, right? I remember growing up, you were a relief pitcher
Yeah,
of the year for the Independent League. So
yeah,
a lot of us know,
and
especially on Long Island, now that we have a
you
team
got
here.
the Ducks.
That's the Ducks. Yes, sir.
Got the Ducks. So yeah, I had a good year in '75. That was 4-0 with 20 saves, and I was a closer that year. Funny, but I just got off the phone this morning with the guy who was my manager that year. I talked to him this morning, and we had some good laughs and good reminiscence. So, but yeah, that was a good year. Bill Veck actually saw me pitch in Comiskey Park in Chicago that year, and
Wow.
Showed some interest in possibly bringing me up to the White Sox. That didn't work out. Um, so I never did get another shot at the bigs.
Okay, but of course now you're with the Bigs with Doug and
Of course,
yeah, so Doug, how did you meet Dave?
Oh man, do I even want to remember this?
Sure you do. Come on. How impactful is it in your life?
So we have to go back. It's kind of crazy. 26 years. I was transitioning from the Atlanta area to Corning, New York. Now, if you don't know of Corning, it's a pretty famous little town. It's a glass town. It's invented major things like the light bulb, how to make the light bulb, fiber optics. People know it for pots and pans, the old Pyrex days and those kind of things. And I'm sitting here reading this article in Atlanta, Georgia area in a coffee shop. I was studying for my Series 7, going to work for Merrill Lynch at the time. And I read this article on a break. It talks about this man at 5'2" playing professional baseball on crutches, winning the Heroes of Sports Award. That's the award that he was given back then at the Atlanta Congress Center. And this was a big award. Nike people were there, Dick Schaap was there, some big names in the sport. Have that video now, so I've been able to re-see how Dave accepted that award. And I'm sitting here reading the article about that in 2000, but I have a child that was born with no arms, and he's just a baby, not even walking at the time when we were transitioning and moving the family. And as it would be, I get back to my office. I was going back and forth at this particular time in my career. And so I was flying back and forth, and I get into my office and I ask my brother Kurt, who is this Dave Clark person that played professional baseball on crutches? Do you know him? And my brother Kurt goes, yeah, I know Dave. I've known him for years. And I'm like, well, why don't I know this story? I mean, this guy played professional baseball on crutches. You would think this would be known. And especially for a family like ours, I grew up in the sports world. My father was a world-class runner. I got to meet people like Jesse Owens when I was a child, and I often joke about saying I met Bruce Jenner when he was still Bruce, and so those are the kind of people that was kind of normal for me to be around at least a little bit when I was a child. And so to not know Dave's story didn't really make any sense to me. But now my situation was I was much more keen to a story like this, having a child born with neither arm developed. And I sought Dave out, and as it would be, I say the winds blew us together. You could say it was a spiritual thing as well, easy enough.
Yeah.
And I went to a ball game in Elmira, New York. Dave was a part-time pitching coach as he had retired from the Swedish major leagues after winning 3 championships in a row as the manager in the Swedish Elite League, and moved back to Corning more permanently at that time. And so, with my child in my arms, I walked around to the dugout, asked Dave to meet with me. And as I remember it, as we've pieced this together, I had to wait for Dave to finish with some media questions. And so I have him off to my right. He's answering some questions from the media. He breaks, he comes over. I get his cell phone number and he says, sure, we'll meet. And so a few weeks later, I don't even remember how long it took. We had a breakfast together and I peppered him with questions. I wanted to know his story. I wanted to know it from a father's perspective. And the only thing, there's a couple things that I remember about that breakfast. One of them was Dave was very conscientious about being in a scooter. Due to the post polio, Dave needed to use the scooter more. And here he was an Olympic coach, an Atlanta Braves coach, championship coach, a guy who played professional baseball on crutches, scout for 6 different major league teams, all this huge resume. And now he's needing to resort to being in a scooter more. And he was very conscientious about that. And then I asked him questions about his parents. And Dave asked or told me at that point, not asked me. Dave told me that nobody had ever asked him questions like I was asking him. And then the other thing, I didn't let him get away with what he was trying to get away with. Don't ask me how I did this. Every time he did something like that, I would do just the opposite. I'd ask him, well, so how did you play ice hockey as a goalie? Did you skate? Did you, no, I didn't need skates because I couldn't skate. So I made him, I say made him, I kept asking the questions that I wanted to know because none of it made sense to me. And the light bulb didn't really go off to me until after a long phone conversation we had on my cell phone. It was so long, I didn't go into the house because I had a bunch of young kids at the time. And I was just sitting out on the porch continuing this conversation. And I'm asking Dave these questions, and he starts talking about the Indianapolis Clowns. And quite frankly, I was completely ignorant at the time of the Indianapolis Clowns. I knew of the Negro Leagues, I knew of Hank Aaron. And so I'm ignorantly thinking, oh, it was a sideshow. You played because they had you in there as somebody was disabled that couldn't get anybody out, but they put you in anyway. And then he said, no, no, no. And then I said, well, what?
When I couldn't get anybody out.
Yeah, but your
Well,
ERA
there
says
might have been some
differently.
days.
There's a few days like that, but in this long-winded story cut short, it didn't make any sense to me until I started asking him what his pitches were. And he started off saying, well, I had a 12-6 curve and my fastball was 79 miles an hour. Well, even being a track guy, I grew up in enough sports to know 79 miles an hour is not going to get you a professional contract at any level. And then he finally told me, he said, well, I threw a knuckleball as my primary pitch. And I'm like, okay, well, why didn't you just lead with that? Because now that makes sense. Knowing what the knuckleball did and
Sure.
actually being a fast pitch. I actually pitched fast pitch up until my mid 20s and actually probably late 20s, early 30s. And I used a knuckleball. I had big hands and I could actually use a knuckleball with my own fast pitch softball. So I was very familiar with the effectiveness of a knuckleball. And obviously we had Phil Necro, and I actually went to college in Georgia with Phil Necro Jr. And we were not friends, but we knew each other. We were
In the same
acquaintances.
circles. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of my best friends was a good friend of his. That's kind of how that circle was. But anyway, so when he told me the knuckleball, it was like the fireworks went off, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how does not anybody know about this story? How are we ignorant to this story?
I'm still so amazed by it, and especially with all the great work that you guys do.
Yeah. I mean, we just keep plugging away, and Dave didn't think he had a story. That moment kind of changed the breakfast that we had years ago. I don't know if you want to share that story because I think that's kind of interesting. Here you go.
Here, the Sorges breakfast. Yeah, I packed all this stuff away after I finished playing career. And I was just another guy out of millions, thousands that played little professional baseball, and I didn't think anything of it really. I will say this though, what you see with the camps today, the seed was laid way back in the 70s for that. Um, I was always cognizant of how lucky I was to be able to do what I do with my limitations and realize for some reason the big guy upstairs selected me to be able to do that because not many can. So I would go into a town in the 70s when we were playing and I'd see a group home or something. I'd walk in off the street and I'd say, "Hey, you want some tickets for tonight's game?" And of course, they always say, "Yeah, we'll take tickets," and bring a group out. And then I'd go one step further. I'd say, "Hey, listen, if you got anybody that wants to come out 3-4 hours early, I'll get a couple of my teammates and we'll get them right down on the field and do a little clinic workout with them." And that's how it all started. It was very unorganized. The first one, I can't remember. We had 4, 5, 6 people come out from a group home in Jasper, Indiana. And it evolved into what you see today. After I retired as a player, the first one we ever did that I will call organized was at a VA center in Bath, New York. And man, was that ever accepted? That was a huge thing. We did it all week. We did it Monday through Friday, every day for a week. And we had those guys out there and they just loved it. Yeah. And then I could start seeing the value of you can take things for granted for so long, but then you start seeing the joy and the happiness and the camaraderie, all those words that you experience when you watch this. And it started resonating with me about how to do this. And then, years later, Doug came on board. The reason his brother knew me was because we used the Corning YMCA where his brother worked for our camps in Corning, New York. And, and then once I met Doug, he was talking about all these far-fetched ideas. Let's do a movie. Let's do this. I said, nah, you know what I really want to do? More of these camps. And Doug jumped on board, came down to Fort Myers here in Florida to see how I was doing that camp here with the Twins organization. And from there, this guy gets all the credit for blowing it up, so to speak, for watering the seed and watching it grow.
Well, somebody had to plant that seed, and your seed is incredible. What you've done. I mean, the ball, and the type of leadership that you had on the field. This again, I know some of your stories. I mean, I've been around these two guys for a while, and that's an honor. I'm honored to say that. And for anybody who doesn't know about the D3 day camps, you have to come down to one of those times, and it's well, let you guys talk about it. Nobody wants to hear me.
Well, I want to hear you. So no, but
Yeah,
anyway,
not
no.
really.
So for those that don't know what Dave and I do primarily, this is our bullseye, is that we put on events for children and young adults of all ages, primarily with disabilities, either intellectually or physically or both challenged. And we give them a day on a field, typically with professional baseball players. So we'll do the Phillies organization, Yankees organization, Twins, and others. And these children and young adults get a free day on the field to dream to do. And that's why we call it Disability Dream and Do. It actually comes from a quote that Dave did in a keynote before I knew him, but somebody recorded it, thankfully, where he said there was two types of dreamers. There's dreamers that dream, and there's dreamers that dream and do. And we took that and called it disability dream and do. And so with that, we just excited because we can get those kids on the field. That's what Dave's excited about. Let them have a chance to explore their potential. And then as a father with challenges, father of a child with challenges, I'm excited because I get to introduce Dave's story. And as you well know, the other Dave, which hopefully you have him on the podcast again too. And I get to introduce these two incredible Daves to share to the families, you know what, your son or daughter might have been dealt a different hand, but you know what? Let them figure out where their life can go. Don't hold them back. Let them explore their potential. And, quite frankly, it's one thing if I say it. I'm 6'2". I was an athlete, and I didn't have these kind of challenges growing up. But when you got a guy in a scooter on crutches who had polio, who's got curvature of the spine, and then you got another Dave who was born with no legs, who played 3 sports in high school and college, and was a 7-time Emmy Award winner. When those two Daves are sharing what I just shared, well, the impact is so much greater. And that's what we get to do. We give them this free day. We feed everybody. They get hats. They get T-shirts. They get to interact and meet with these players. We get tickets to a game where we do some other activities, first pitches for these children, high five tunnels, all of that. And we do that at how much cost to the families? It's a big zero. We've never charged a dime, even when we barely had money at ourselves at times to put these on. We've never charged one dime for these events. And we just want to do more of that. And that's what Disability Dream and Do is, d3day.com. And we want children and young adults that have been dealt this different hand to be able to look at examples like Dave and say, you know what, I want to be the next one. I want to find out how far I can take my potential.
Yeah, no, that 100%. The funniest story about how I've met you guys is years ago, Dave. Well, you had one of the camp events in Binghamton with my sister and my two nephews. Who one just got his master's degree, but and they kept on talking about it. And then when we were going to meet at an event, a podcasting event that I thought Dave was going to be at, and I'm looking at it, and Doug and I'm
So disappointing that it was me.
well, it wasn't. You're one of the people who you and I talk about all the time. So we've become very close. And been so honored to be part of those days. Those days are some of the best days of my life. I talk about it no matter how far I travel to do that. The trip home is so much quicker because I feel so uplifted. And I've started to bring in some people. I've been talking about it. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be working to do as well, for all the upcoming events, but to get to know you guys and know some of the stories. But you wrote a book, well, you've written a couple of books, but the one of the books that I wanted to talk about is Dave's story, because that pulling each other along, right? Before D3, it was pull each other along. What does that mean to you? And the story a little bit about it.
So are you talking about the children's book story?
The children's book story, and then we'll go into the stories of other people you guys found in your network.
Yeah. Here you go. You want me to share it? All right, I'll share it so he doesn't cry. So we have to go back to 1958 for this particular story, and I'm the author of it, and I have my own experience with this story. But I'm a father with a child who has no arms, and so this one digs a little deeper for me. But if you can go back to 1958, thankfully before I was born, since he's such an old man, he was 6 years old, and he was mainstreamed in the little school where actually my granddaughter goes right now, the Hugh Gregg School in Corning, New York. And as a 6-year-old, when he went to school, this was the first time that Dave was made to feel different. In his backyard and his home around his brothers and his mother, and they didn't really treat him any differently because they were used to it. And I understand this because I know the people that are around my son Gideon, they don't even hardly see the disability anymore because they're just Gideon. It doesn't make any difference to us. But when he's introduced to a new audience, people tend to stare. They treat him differently. They don't know how to talk to him, etc. And so when Dave went to first grade at the Hugh Gregg School, this was the first time he really experienced this. he was made to feel very different by the teachers. They didn't allow him to participate in phys ed class. They pulled out a chair for him to sit in. And when his first grade teacher, Mrs. Lewis, all of a sudden announces a field trip where the whole class is to walk 5 blocks away to the local the fire hall. This guy to my left here, that's anxiety driven, and he has a bit of anxiety and a bit of a temper and things like that really stir him. And as a 6-year-old, this was where that seed really started. And all of a sudden, he's being bullied. He's being called oleo, which rhymes with polio. They picked on him at recess. He's not able to participate in phys ed class, and now all of a sudden they're wanting him to walk 5 blocks away to the local fire hall. Well, that's a long way, for a little boy 6 years old on crutches and braces, trying to trudge along and catch up to his classmates, etc. And so as that day got closer, his anxiety, went through the roof, and so much so that the day of the event finally comes, and he's coughing and cough, 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 and he's trying to fake his mother out, and of course his mother's an old school gal, as he would say, and she knows he's not sick, and she says, "Dave, you are not going to be late. Let's get going. Get those braces on, and let's get to school." And so off to school he goes, and I'm not sure what he's doing right now. Oh, he's got to go let the dog out. Who let the dog out? Anyway, so to ruin the greatest part of this story, Dave's got all this anxiety, and he goes to the back of the line thinking this is going to be the worst day of his life. And so that anxiety is there. He doesn't want to go to school. He knows he doesn't want to go to this trip. He knows he's going to be left behind. So he goes to the back of the line. And while he's in the back of the line, and the line formed, one of his classmates named Ernie Pound brings up a radio flyer wagon and says, "Dave, jump in. I want to pull you." And all of a sudden, everything is lifted off this little boy, 6 years old. And then it made it a fun day. It's as simple as that. This little act of kindness became a day of fun where the kids pulled him. They wanted to take turns pulling him on the way there, on the way back. The fire hall was cool and all those things, and seeing the red engines and the big fire chiefs and all that stuff that you get. And it was just a day you never forgot. And so where I come in to this now long-winded story is years later, Dave finally got together with a sports writer and wrote a book about his life story called The Diamond in the Rough, the Dave Clark story. Not yet, but I will. You keep me straight over here. And so Dave writes this book. I helped him a bit, packaging things, getting things printed off, sending it off to the publicist, all those kind of things. So I had read the story now probably a couple of times. But when the book finally came out, I helped him organize book signings. And I got like 5 book signings in the Corning area. People were coming and lining up. And during that time, I reread the chapter. And I go, you know what? I got to find these people from chapter 2. It was called My Saviors. It was the people that saved him. His father was a story in there. His phys ed teacher, which is a story we talk often, and Ernie Pound. And he thanked Ernie in the book. And so I found Ernie in the phone book, had this awkward phone call from my Merrill Lynch office. He doesn't want to come to it's probably caller ID back then, now that when we think about it. And so he doesn't want to talk to me. And I say, I'm looking for an Ernie Pound that went to first grade in Corning, New York. And I said, he's thanked in a book for bringing his radio flyer wagon to school to help a classmate. And then he finally talked to me and he says, well, I remember the wagon. And he wound up coming to a book signing at a coffee shop on a snowy night. He puts a book underneath Dave's nose. And when Dave says, who should I sign this to? He just basically says, sign this one to Ernie Pound. And of course, this little guy over here got quite emotional. And they hugged and they talked and they connected, and they're still connected to this day. And then when I left Merrill Lynch and we started sharing that story, every time we shared that story, people were like, oh my gosh, that's the best story I've ever heard. And so we wrote a book about it, and we wrote a book called A Pound of Kindness. So I have a children's book called apoundofkindness.com, and We love people to get those individually. They can also get them with a donation to the Dave Clark Foundation. They can get a box of them for, a box of 30. With a bigger donation, we send them a box so that they can give that kindness out to other people at children's hospitals or Ronald McDonald houses or
Oh,
whatever.
kindergarten. I did that for my niece in Florida.
Yeah. Yes, you
And
did.
yeah, so there's always ways to see it. But when people hear that story, and that it's true, it's so powerful. There's
Yep.
so many powerful again, I've been around you guys for a while, so I know a lot of the stories. I don't know them all, but each story is impactful, and that's why I got to get these guys out. So anybody who hears this, really, you got to hear all the stories. And it doesn't
we,
do
we
any
should,
justice for me to share the stories because I didn't live it. It was just a story. But when you meet Dave, and the first time I met him, and I told him the story about meeting he might not have remembered this. They meet thousands of families a year, and it was several years after that. But he did ask me. He goes, "So how's everybody doing?" And that shows exactly the type of heart Dave Clark has, and Dave Steve has a wonderful heart, and Doug, well, he's all right. No, Doug's an amazing guy as well.
I just have amazing patience to deal with the Daves. That's what I
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
Hey, David, and again, I for whatever reason, I'm a magnet to Davids,
yeah.
and you're one of them. I have multiple Davids in my life. I'm dealing with another one in North Carolina now, David Schwantowski, and some others. But there's something that just came up that I don't even think you know about. Maybe we talked about it, but I don't think you know about this yet. It just happened last week. Dave has a story that really changed his life, and I don't want to tell this one for him. I want him to share this one.
Sure,
But let's do that on this podcast, and then I'm going to tell you why this is so relevant right now.
sure.
But here you go. So we're going to go back to his elementary school. Impactful days. In a situation like this for a child like him, and this is going to be 2 years after that wagon pull.
Yeah, as Doug said, I wasn't allowed to participate in phys ed, and as a kid back in the 50s and 60s, you did exactly what you were told. That may be a
Sure.
little different today, but back then we did what we were told, and so um, there was a chair on the sideline. I went over and sat in it and watched the kids all have fun, and that was not really a fun experience for me. But I did what I was told. Come third grade, I had a new gym teacher. His name was Mr. Snetchler, and he was a military man with a crew cut and tough, gruff guy. And first day in class with him, he got us around him, told us what we were going to do, and clapped his hands, said, "Let's go." I immediately took off for a chair, only there wasn't a chair there. I figured new chair, new teacher, he forgot the chair, so I kept taking a couple steps before I heard this. "Where do you think you're going?" And I turned around and I was shaking, and he did like this. And I went back over to him. I thought, what did I do now? I'm in trouble. But he looked me right in the eyes and he told me something I never forgot. He looked at me and he said, "Dave, there are going to be things in this class that you might not be able to do. You're never going to know what those things are until you try them.
Mm.
And you are going to try everything in this class." So there was the edict. I had to go from not being able to participate to trying everything in the class. Well, the activity that day was climbing the rope to the ceiling. I didn't think I had a snail's chance of making that up that rope. But my turn came and he said I had to try it. So I did. I dropped my crutches. I put my hands on the rope and put fist over fist and I started elevating. What I didn't realize was that I had built a lot of upper body strength by using the crutches.
Mm.
And I just kept going. That was amazing, even myself. And I got 3/4 of the way up the rope and stopped. That was as far as anybody in the class had gotten. So I stopped and I thought, good enough. That's good enough. I'm farther than anybody in the class. And then the guy on the other shoulder said, "No, it's not good enough. Keep going. finish the job.
Mm.
So I kicked back in and I had more gas in the tank than I thought I had. And I reached the top and touched the beam. And now I had a big problem because I couldn't form that little S with my feet to slow my descent. And I had 10 pounds of weight on my legs with the braces.
Ooh.
So I came flying down that rope extremely fast, burned the heck out of my hands. But when I got to the bottom, that was the best burn feel I've ever had. The kids were all amazed. Mr. Snetchler gave me an ice cream bar as a reward, and he proved his point. The very first activity we did, you don't know what you can do until you try it.
So let's fast forward. I think it was last year. Just last year, we found out that this phys ed teacher passed away. And I'm pretty good, I guess, at setting up reunions because back in 2018, I had a Bill Snetchler Jr. come up on my Facebook. Now, I've been trying to get a hold of the Snetchlers for years at this point. Not able to do it. They had a number in the phone book, but that one just rang and rang and rang and rang, and it just never answered. And so finally, I see a Bill Snetchler Jr. come up on my Facebook, and I sent him a message, and it was Bill Snetchler's son, this gym teacher's son. And I said, you know what? We give an award away. It's called the Pulling Each Other Along Award. It's an award that Dave and I give away that you're well aware of, David Schmetzky. And I said, we want to give one to your late father. I was thinking that the gym teacher had passed away. And we had already shared his story many times on keynotes. Dave shared the story and he referred to him often actually as a Marine because he had the crew cut and he just had that Marine feel to him or whatever. And all of a sudden, we're finding out that he wasn't a Marine, that he was in the 10th Mountain Division, 3 tours in Italy, major war hero, major soldier, major hero. He actually went from a private in the Army to a commissioned colonel, which I think is the highest rank that a private can get to. If I have that correct, I'm not a military person 100%. So, and he had won bronze awards, Purple Hearts. I think he had it all, and some what I can do in my own research, some very, very, very thick, heavy fighting. That he experienced and it was very mountainous, very cold.
Yeah, sure.
That was some of the most brutal fighting of all. And in here, he gets through the Army, and he changes a life. And it's the one right here to my left. So I share this story because we set up a reunion with him years ago. I shared this story on a podcast, or actually it was a radio show that I was on, and we got an offer to have Colonel Snetchler meet with Dave during VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, in May at the Washington Memorial. And they met again, and of course, Dave cried like a baby again when we gave him the Pulling Each Other Along award. He was 93 years old, I believe, at the time. And so we created this reunion with Dave and the Colonel, and they got to present wreaths together. So why do I get to share this story now, and it's even more prevalent, is because just last week I was sent a message from Bill Snetchler's daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law, saying that Dave and I were invited to his funeral in Arlington on August 28th.
Oh.
And so we're trying to make that happen. I do have the children's book called A Pound of Kindness, but I'm throwing it out in the universe. We're looking for a major sponsor. I don't want small sponsors for this. We're looking for a major sponsor to help us create this story in a children's book form. I already have the titles, all those kind of things. And we want to get the funding to honor this man and the legacy that he has helped basically pave. Because Dave would often say, without him being able to participate in phys ed, we might not be having this podcast right now. There might not be the Dave Clark that we know. He opened the door for Dave to try everything. And then Dave got to find out that he could be successful. And so now we're doing these sports camps all over the country with different teams, speaking, sharing these stories. And we want to create a story that will honor this legacy for both Dave Clark and for Colonel Schnetzler. Anyway, so
All
that's
right, let's put it out there, and you and I will talk offline on some things like that. I didn't know about that part, but but so really, and that's one of the things that I know personally. Just being around you and Dave really does. You guys are uplifting human beings, and it's really just amazing to be around. But and you've learned things also. I know there's a story where I'm going to lead for you, Dave. Is the time after a pitching experience that didn't go over so well, but there was a little girl who came over to you, wanted to see you, and how you guys to show what type of role model you've been your whole life, not just now because the ball playing's over, which is still so impactful, but you've always been that leader.
Well, you're right. It was one of the worst games I ever played that you're alluding to. And the last thing I wanted to do is leave the clubhouse and go back out to see some fans. I was livid. Came off the field. Not only did I stink, the whole team stunk. We were beat 22-5 or something. We were just handed our hats on a platter, and so I'm in the clubhouse beating my crutch up against a post and a metal post in the clubhouse, probably using every 4-letter deletive that you could ever think of, and pounding this crutch into a C. And one of my teammates comes up and tries to intervene and says, "Hey, and I said, get away from me, stay away from me, get off." I kept pounding the crutch. Came up a second time. A couple minutes later, I did the same thing. Get out of here, get away from me, and I kept pounding the crutch. Third time he came up, he used the word wheelchair. He said, "Listen, there's a girl in a wheelchair." And as soon as he said wheelchair, something clicked and I froze. Now he had my attention. He said, "There's a father with a little girl in a wheelchair out there. They desperately want to meet you." And now I had a problem. I said, "Can you straighten that crutch out right there so I can get back out there?" And so you got a guy in spikes jumping up and down on a metal crutch, bending it back in shape, gets it to where I can use it. And I go out, and sure enough, here's this little 10, 12-year-old girl in a wheelchair, and she's all excited. She's jumping up and down, and her father said, "Mr. Clark, saying thank you so much for coming out to talk to my daughter. She wanted to really meet you so bad." And I was still thinking to myself, I said, "I'm sorry you had to see that mess. That was the worst game I've ever played in my career, probably. And I stunk the place out. And you don't understand." And she's jumping up and down. "You don't understand." And I said, "I understand. It was the worst game I ever played. I'm so sorry you had to see that mess." And "No, you don't understand." And he jumped up and down. Finally, I said to her, "What is it that I don't understand?" And she stopped jumping up and down. And she looked at me and she said, "You were on the field."
Mm.
I never forgot that. You were on the field, and it didn't matter that I stunk. The fact was that I was on that field, and it was being looked at from a different perspective by her. And I tell that story in almost every clubhouse that I go into and speak to the players, because we all need that reality check, and to show what a privilege it is and was to have been able to do what I did.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I feel when I'm on the field with you guys. Uh, by helping out and assisting and being part of the team, you see the faces of the kids who think they're playing on Yankee Stadium field, seventh game World Series, and all that, the emotions. And I'll share with both of you, and I know I've shared with Doug, and I think I've mentioned it to you, Dave. The first time I took my friend Morris, when I brought him in, he's the one who helps me out with the Goons for Good. And when we brought his adult brother, who's never played ball with his dad on the field because he was a special needs, and you know the day that we got out there, we've taken him every time since. When you're in Wappinger Falls, he's out there. It's the best day of the year, and those are the experiences. You look in all the faces of the people. I remember, I don't remember if it was Lakewood or Wappinger Falls. It was the blind man who, never played ball at all because he didn't have sight. But that day, he felt what hitting the sweet spot was, hitting that baseball, and all the handshakes. You guys are changing lives, and that's why I just want to make sure that we always get your messages out there, tell you about it, and even just tell the story a little bit more, a little louder about the clowns. You're still one of the you're the only owner of a Negro ball club who's right now. Is that correct?
Only living owner. That's
Only
correct.
living. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, right. Of course, there's other owners.
You're still living, right?
Yeah.
So,
But it's
Okay.
yeah.
He's good.
But yeah, I mean, those are the stories. Like the fact that people aren't hearing your story and impactful, I don't understand it. Just it's a feel good story, but it also has so many messages.
I understand it because to be honest with you, I hate talking about it. I mean, the guy over here to my right has made me very aware of the impact that it has. I don't think I realized that. And I just hate talking about myself. I always have. I never wanted to be the star on a team. I just wanted to do my job and be part of the group. And that I'm sorry, that's who I am.
No, and that's what you have done. You have done your job, right? There's the old saying, if you save one person, you save the world. You guys, I know, impact thousands of lives every year, and multiply that. Those are those, balls of light that go out there that really are impactful. Now, I don't want to take up much more of your time, but I always ask everybody, and I'm gonna, instead of walking into the magic garden, I'm gonna say, let's walk into the bullpen. Give me one piece of advice right before we get to go that somebody needs to hear.
Oh boy, that's a good question. I think the thing that I would tell everybody is prepare, always prepare, like without ever being guaranteed an opportunity.
Okay.
If you've got a dream, as I said earlier, there's dreamers that dream, there's dreamers that dream and do. Well, do. If you've got a dream, do without anybody giving you a guarantee you're ever going to get a chance. Because if you're willing to do that and the chance comes along, you're going to be ready to give it your best shot. Is it going to be enough? Hopefully, but if it's not, at least you know you gave it your best effort. If you don't work and the opportunity comes along, you're not going to be ready for that opportunity. So my best advice is to put the time and effort into a dream without ever having a golden opportunity presented to you. Then you will be ready when the opportunity comes.
That's awesome. Thanks. That's our sweet spot. How about you, Doug?
Gosh, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me. I have a kind of just a different thought. I know this came up. Dave and I just spoke at a kindness summit in Fort Myers this past week, and somebody was like listening to Dave's story, and it's like, oh man, he's overcome so much. What's my excuse? Kind of thing. And you almost have this guilt complex, like, hey, I didn't have polio, I didn't have arm missing or a limitation or whatever, and they almost feel like it's a sense of I wasn't good enough. I was given all my tools and I still wasn't good enough. And I kind of want to flip that on people. And I want to say, no, use Dave's story, because we haven't talked about the other Dave much, not as a means of making yourself feel bad. Make it a means as, you know what? I just need to learn from their resilience. And one of the things that I've learned from Dave is that the resilience is the major thing that we can learn from a Dave Clark. and that we get knocked down. I mean, Dave and I have been knocked down, and we continually feel like we get the punches coming our way. But use a Dave story as a point of, you know what, if a guy like Dave Clark can keep going through post polio, through cancer, through polio when he was a child, through being bullied and picked on, and all those kind of things, suck it up and keep going. And I think that's really where we are. You know, how can I quit on what we're doing with the D3 day when it gets hard? Because it has gotten hard many, many, many times, especially since COVID. But you know what? We suck it up and we keep moving. And I really feel like that's the main thing that many people can get from a story like Dave Clark is just one more hand over the other hand. And when you're completely wiped out and you're three-quarters of the way up, don't listen to the person telling you to quit. Listen to the person telling you, you know, just one more hand up and keep moving.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. And I have one more question. Has the Hall of Fame ever reached out to you, like with the last bat you used to, you know?
Interesting you asked that question. Yeah. I just didn't get a firm answer as to whether it was going to be a permanent display or temporary display and then stored.
Mm.
And the bat means, I mean, I'm not a collector. Never collected baseball cards or anything like that. But that bat does mean a little bit to me. So I want to make sure if I donate that anywhere, that they're going to use it
Right. It get
properly.
used for good. Yep. Yeah. It gets used for
Properly.
good.
Yeah.
As you do with
Yeah.
everything else. You.
Let me turn around and ask you one last question, Dave.
Yeah, sure.
Who made the last put out at first base in that game? He's a well-known NFL quarterback who signed himself to a one-day contract to play in that game because he was the general manager of the team we played, Charlotte, North Carolina. The two teams he played with were the Eagles and the Rams, and it was, I believe, 70s, maybe early 80s. He caught the ball at first base to retire me on the throw from the third baseman.
All right. Well, I'm not really sure. So, okay. I guess trying to think of Eagles quarterbacks that also played for the Rams. The first name that came up, but I don't think he played for the Eagles, was Ferragamo. You know, Vince Ferragamo. Um,
Oh,
and
good guess, but no.
who is he?
I'll give you his initials, RG.
RG. Okay. I'm not sure. I
Roman Gabriel.
okay. Oh, okay.
Roman Gabriel. He caught the throw from the third baseman for the last out of the Negro League history.
Wow. All right. Well, let's hope that we get this story out there. So while the history, you know, we keep learning and hear more about your clowns and how that legacy should continue to be told as well as your own legacy.
I appreciate your time you gave to us today. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, David, and thank you for your help too, as a volunteer, sponsor, the whole bit. Don't underestimate how much that means to us as well.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Like I said, I feel sometimes guilty that I get more out of those days than what I feel I put into it. So I really enjoy being there and everything.
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Okay, and for everybody else, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm sure you did. It was great, some stories. Let's keep sharing the Dave Clark story, the talk about D3 Day and Disability Dream and Do, and always have peace and love in your life because that's a great foundation. And that's what we want to do. And when we bring a bat, we want to hit that sweet spot that Dave was talking about. And remember, that's bringing awesome thoughts and being awesome today. God bless.